Hello, everyone. As mentioned, I'm Sandrine Palmer. I'm from AWS, and I'm part of the Cloud Economics team. So today I'm going to go through a couple of points in regards to cloud economics, which is the AWS perspective on how to maximize the ROI when moving to the cloud. First, I'll talk about cloud economics. Then I'll focus in on the AWS Cloud Value Framework. Then I'll focus in on how to build an AWS business case, followed by cloud financial management and how to build cloud financial management so that you do realize the value of the cloud. So what is cloud economics? Cloud economics is a complementary service that helps customers such as yourself make informed decisions when it comes to moving to the cloud, and then helps customers to realize that value. Some of the questions that we answer is how and by how much will my cost structure change in the cloud? What other benefits are achievable in the cloud? And what will be their estimated financial impact? And then we'll also answer some questions in regards to what are the financial implications depending on the various paths we take, followed by what cloud financial management practices do I need to have in order to continuously optimize the cloud and realize the value of it. So cloud economics is actually divided into two functions. We have business value and cloud financial management. Business value is the first part, which really focuses on quantifying the value of moving to the cloud, whereas cloud financial management typically focuses on realizing that. Now, as a customer, you're probably going to experience the journey that we see up on the screen. First, you're probably in here today to discover how can AWS Cloud add value to my industry and my business outcomes? Perhaps you're a bit more along your journey and you're evaluating in terms of, well, what differentiates AWS? What is the economic justification for AWS Cloud? And for some customers, they may already be following into the buy, use, expand, and renew phases. In either case, whether you're working with business value to understand what is the value, or you're working with cloud financial management, we continuously support customers in a virtuous cycle in order to answer these questions to understand the value of the cloud. So that's an introduction about cloud economics. Now I'm going to go into the AWS Cloud Value Framework. So our business value team has come up with a framework to help customers understand what is the value of moving your workloads to the cloud. There are 4 pillars that are tied into this framework, starting with cost savings, or the total cost of ownership, then focusing on staff productivity, which is all about efficiency improvements for each individual in your company. Then it's about operational resilience. What are the benefits in terms of improved SLAs and reducing unplanned outages? Followed by the last one, which is business agility. How are you able to deploy new features faster and more in reaction to the market than could you previously? In all of these pillars, as you can see, there's an element of impact to moving to the cloud. And from a cost impact, when we think about the TCO pillar, moving to the staff productivity, to more of a value impact when we think about the operational resiliency benefits and business agility advantages that are gained. Now, one thing to highlight is that while cost savings is the most tangible, it is the one we are most familiar with when moving workloads to the cloud, it's actually not the biggest part of what is the value of moving to the cloud. In the study published by IDC a few years back, it found that actually the non-TCO drivers, so the staff productivity, the better operational resilience, the increased agility you have, actually makes up 90% of the value when you are operating in the cloud. And that serves as the basis of the Cloud Value Framework. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a deep dive on each of these pillars to explain what are some of the data points, what does it mean when you are thinking about your total cost of ownership versus increased agility and the like. So when it comes to cost savings, the way we look at it at AWS is from a perspective of optimization. Now, as we see here, this is an illustrative example of how a customer has optimized their environment and thus have a lower total cost of ownership when operating the cloud. For many customers, they'll start on-premise and then they'll do a direct match when moving to the cloud. As you can see, there's quite a bit of increase. Part of this can be down to migration costs. It could be due with some testing, duplications, and the like. But during that migration, what customers can do and have done is that they start taking in the advantages of the cloud right away. First, by right-sizing, meaning that you right-sizing your instances so that they match your compute needs. Then they'll start thinking about and start deploying purchasing elasticity, things like reserved instances and savings plans, before also looking at optimizing their storage. Do X number of backups need to be taken each week, each month, or can that actually be optimized? As a result, by the time the migration is finished, there is already about a 21% price cost difference between when they were on-premise. But it doesn't stop there. Just as your business goals, your strategies change and evolve with your environments, you'll find that you'll start moving into a more transformative phase post your migration. And so you still have opportunities to optimize your costs, whether that's bringing in measurement, monitoring, and improvement, looking into modernization, as we have a session later to discuss that, and even looking at modernization from both a data layer and application standpoint, to where you end up getting to roughly scenario 3, a major transformation in which actually your TCO is about 50% less than if you were to compare to it on premise. And I'll just say a few words to wrap up this pillar in regards to modernization. As mentioned, one of the ways that you can further gain value from the cloud is to consider modernization. Now, the business value team has taken a look at this using its framework, tying it back to 4 major modernization pathways: containers, serverless, managed data, and managed analytics, and found a lot of those 4 pillars still hold up to be true when modernizing your applications. So just as there is a value to moving your workloads to the cloud, there is value to modernizing, from increase in organization revenue, reduction in your IT spend, reduction in security incidents, and a faster time to insight. So that is the first pillar of the cloud value framework. The next one I'm going to focus on is staff productivity. So when moving to the cloud, what we see here is a very common scenario in which when they first start on the cloud, in terms of the current state, a lot of the tasks that your staff or your employees will be engaged with are very tactical. They're undifferentiated. Things like planning downtime in your servers, budgeting for any new server purchases. And the number of activities that are strategic and differentiating you in the market are quite low. Once the lift and shift begins towards AWS, that starts to change. There'll be a lot less activities that are going to be tactical, that are going to be done by your staff members, and rather more strategic ones and then that is going to start to increase to the point where post-migration, and as you're working and becoming more cloud first, your staff productivity will increase as they're working on more strategic tasks. Some examples of these tasks that I've been mentioning and how much they are reduced when operating the cloud include, for example, server budgeting and planning. When customers move to the cloud, they find that that task for their staff typically reduces by 90%. Why is that? Because from an AWS and cloud perspective, there is no capital server budget or planning needed in the cloud. But probably the one that strikes most customers is the one highlighted in orange, which is the task of arranging for repair of hardware on occasion of hardware failure. That is 100% reduced when operating in the cloud, because you might have heard of it or you might not have, but there is such thing called as the AWS shared responsibility model. If you haven't seen it, I would recommend to take a look at it. But what that shared responsibility model means is that AWS shares a responsibility when it comes to the infrastructure and the like. So such tasks that were typically being managed by your staff no longer have to be managed by your colleagues. And instead, they can focus on more interesting projects, such as running a proof of concept or modernizing your cloud apps, so on and so forth. Some data points, as AWS is a very data-driven company, show that what do we mean and how does it look when we talk about increased staff productivity? Well, when it comes to number of servers managed per administrator, we already see that there's a 58% increase in the number of servers managed per administrator. That number is exponentially higher when we think about this from a containerized apps point of view. Similarly, with terabytes managed per administrator, when customers move to the cloud, they see an increase in their staff productivity from the standpoint that the number of terabytes managed by per administrator is up by 68%. And once again, when we think about containerized apps, that number is even higher. So that concludes the staff productivity pillar of the cloud value framework. And now I want to focus on the operational resilience and the like. So from here, we can all recognize that time is money. And when there are downtimes or when there are security breaches, this costs a lot of customers headaches, but also costs a lot in terms of money. Just a few examples or some numbers that tie into to show the magnitude of the impact of downtime and security breaches. 1.25 to 2.5 billion. That is according to IDC, the cost of all annual Fortune 1000 application downtime. 3.6 million. This is the average cost of a data breach by the Ponemon Institute, which equals out to almost about $141 being the average cost per lost or stolen record. And given how much data is so important to all of our organizations, this really adds up. And overall, what this then leads to is that it impacts revenue and it impacts profitability. So what happens when customers move to the cloud when it comes to operational resilience? Customers often see a reduction across the board, starting with the reduction in monthly critical incidents, down 21.8%. The number of security instances often decreased down to by 16.3%. When it comes to decreases in mean time to resolution, decrease in incidents per month, the data shows that this is significantly reduced once you are operating and when you're operating in the cloud. But what does that mean perhaps more specifically, or how does that get included in the business case, which is really one of the starting points, and we'll talk about it later, of starting your cloud journey, understanding what your ROI is to be. Well, the three main areas that are included in regards from a business case perspective is the availability, the security, and the risk. And when it comes to expected improvements, they include things such as reduction in planned downtime. No longer do you have to consider when your servers need to be down in order to make updates. You're also going to have a reduction in unplanned downtime, as it's quote-unquote the responsibility of AWS that we have taken on as part of the shared responsibility model. Security, there's expected improvements include a simplified security model, a reduction in incidents, and reduction in data leaks, followed by risk. There'll be a reduction in the probability of a major outage or leakage. So with that, the last pillar that I'm going to give a high-level view on is business agility. So as mentioned, this is the ability for customers to respond to the market, respond to their own customers in a faster turnaround time. Now, when it comes to AWS Cloud, what we look at first is the traditional software delivery lifecycle and see what is the average time associated with that, starting with requirements and analysis, from design to build, which often includes procurement time, to integration and testing, followed by deploying and maintenance. When it comes to the cloud, the benefits overlays all those phases in the software delivery lifecycle. So you can simplify requirement design by leveraging quite a few of the built-in operational solutions and hundreds of AWS and third-party services. You can increase the speed of build and test through continuous integration and delivery pipelines because you are using AWS services that are already in place. You can eliminate deployment wait time with automated application development and smaller deployment batches. And lastly, in terms of maintenance, this is greatly reduced as well as with AWS providing the IT infrastructures and any usage of AWS third-party managed and service options, such as FORTE Cloud. And of course, as mentioned, business agility drives acceleration in areas in terms of product development, marketing, and R&D. So in the case of being able to reduce your IT-related lead times to launch faster, no longer having to wait for a service to arrive, to be able to get faster insights from consolidated data sets in advance, and as mentioned, the R&D and business operation points there. So that was an overview of the Cloud Value Framework, something that the business value team focuses on for customers and the like. Now, I'm going to give a high-level overview of how to build a business case, because this is going to be the first data point that's going to help you understand what will be your return on investment. So, the business case is an essential part of any project. It needs to have a decision paper that explains whether and why you are migrating to the cloud. It should have a general perspective of all costs and benefits, and it needs to have a strong, if not better, understanding of the migration project in and of itself. And one of the key components, too, that tie back into the business case is the visibility of all possibilities that the AWS Cloud unlocks. So, as mentioned, it's important to consider all applicable on-premise costs when building a TCO comparison. This includes not just thinking about your hardware, but also what you've provisioned as spares. What are your maintenance costs? What racks do you have? Any of your operating system license? Going on into facility costs and virtualizations. Having that full picture on-premise is going to enable you to start putting together enable you to have a better picture of what your costs are on-premise so that you can understand what you can realize in the cloud. Of course, it's then important to do an equitable comparison. So while, as this example shows here on the left, while things like facility and racks will no longer be applicable to your case when operating in the cloud, you might be interested in focusing on bringing in AWS support or bringing in partner support. And in that case, you want to make it so that you have as equitable of a comparison as possible. Now, tying back to the Cloud Value Framework, you also want to include those non-TCO factors, because as you may recall from the beginning of this presentation, 90% of what drives business value comes from non-TCO drivers. So that includes, what are you improving in terms of your staff productivity? What are you improving in terms of your operational resilience? And lastly, what benefits are you going to get? We'll see through business agility, more specifically, accelerated development time. And as you can see here, this creates a fuller picture of the value of moving to AWS. There you go. Of course, you would want to make this as comprehensible as a business case as possible. So not just looking at the 1 year ahead, but also looking into the years that come. As well, you want to think about the migration costs that could come into play, whether you do you invest in your own workforce to migrate, whether you lean on AWS or a partner. Keep that in mind along with any benefits that you might see, whether you are involved in the migration acceleration program and the like, to build that comprehensive view of what is going to be your value of moving to the cloud and what is going to be your ROI. So that concludes how the business value side of cloud economics, so quantifying, understanding what is the value of moving to the cloud. I now want to move over to cloud financial management, which is also known as CFM or sometimes referred to as FinOps, which is really focused on realizing the value that's been defined through your business case and through the exercise that was mentioned previously. Because as we can all imagine, just because the value is there, it's another step to realize it. So, a reminder, what we just talked about was the cloud value framework. So what is the value of moving to cloud? And we want to keep this in the back of the mind when you think about one of the biggest realities of when operating the cloud is that it's going to change your technology consumption model. And this is the start of where the origins of cloud financial management come into place. So as you see here on the left, this is the traditional technology consumption model, which is very common on-premise. So here, teams are siloed. There's a very sequential process that is followed by a lot of customers, where the tech teams put in a request, followed by procurement, who either approves or doesn't approve, followed by a whole process of following your supply chain to get your traditional technology consumption model working. And with it, there are a couple elements as well in terms of long procurement cycles and potential high cost of failure. When we think about the cloud and when we start thinking about how do we realize that value, we need to recognize that the technology consumption model is quite different. No longer are we in this sequential process following steps 1, 2, 3, and 4, but actually we're operating in a 3-pronged environment in which we're not only deploying and operating at the same time, we even have the opportunity to optimize. So as a result, we also need to consider that our teams are going to need to interact in a different way. They need to become more collaborative. And this isn't just tech and finance coming together, but also business and business stakeholders. So with that in mind, we have to recognize that cloud is the new data center, but it can't be used like a traditional data center if you want to extract the value of the cloud. This means thinking about how will you manage access to on-demand resources, understanding cloud pricing options, and selecting optimal services and resources, so that right-sizing activity I mentioned earlier, along with a whole line of governance and cost management, as you see there in the bottom. And again, because AWS is very fond of data, wanted to bring up 2 studies that highlight the value, the importance rather, of why your traditional financial management approaches will need to evolve if you want to realize the value of the cloud. So in these 2 studies, starting with the one on the left, it was reported by respondents that when they had poor cloud cost management elements employed in their environment, it led to negative impacts, such as it slowed down their cloud adoption, it lowered their qualities of service, led to underutilization of resources, and probably most tangible to any of us is that it increased costs. Similarly, the second study on the right highlights this in the fact that when it looked at traditional financial management processes, this often would cause excess spend up to $10 billion. So with that in mind, you're probably asking, what does good look like? What does success mean when I'm trying to achieve the value in the cloud? Well, from a CFM perspective, it's about leveraging efficiency to meet your business agility needs. So tying back to efficiencies in cost, staff productivity, operational resilience to meet your business agility needs. So this graph hopefully depicts what good looks like in the sense that for many customers, they're going to see their usage when they move to the cloud increase over time. This can be because they've migrated more workloads into the environment. Maybe you're entering new regions, new countries. Perhaps you've amassed more customers. In either case, it's very common to see an increase in usage. But what good looks like isn't seeing this usage and seeing it decrease in a pay-as-you-use model. Instead, it's looking at that unit cost, the cost per transaction, cost per customer, cost per project, whatever is important to your business strategy and your operating goals, and seeing that stay stagnant, if not better, decrease over time. So how is that achieved? Well, similar to business value, the Cloud Financial Management team also has a framework that helps customers manage, optimize, and plan AWS cost and usage. This is followed by another set of 4 pillars based on see, save, plan, and run. In each of these pillars, there's a number of capabilities or activities that are based on AWS practices that allow the customer to do exactly what's according to that pillar. Now, for many customers, once they've migrated to the cloud, when they're operating on the cloud, they will focus predominantly on the save pillar, so cost optimization. And that's not a bad thing, that's not a problem. However, the customers who really get the value of the cloud, who really realize the value of increased staff productivity, better operational resilience, greater agility, are the customers that look across these 4 pillars and employ that in their teams, in their environments, in their business. Now, similar to what I did for business value, I'm going to go through a high level of each of the 4 pillars in the CFM framework, explain a little bit what they are, and as you can see, there's a customer example on each one. So in each pillar, as I had mentioned, there are a number of activities that should be undertaken and applied back to enabling that specific pillar. In addition to each of these activities, they each have an outcome. This is the why, this is the what's the purpose of that particular activity and how it ties back to the overall pillar. So the first pillar is C, creating measurement and accountability. As you recall, with AWS Cloud, it is a pay-as-you-use model, and you're going to have a lot more visibility because of the native AWS tools, but also because of how it is set up. As a result, some of the activities that should be undertaken for this pillar is first thinking about implementing an account structure and tagging dictionary. Why? What's the outcome from doing so? Well, from there, your cost and usage that in the cloud, you'll be able to map that to workloads and your org structure so that you know when a particular deployment workload may be costing you more than your actual production workload, so on and so forth. Another activity is establishing reporting and monitoring for cloud cost and usage. Why is this important? What are the benefits that come out of bringing this into your organization? Well, then you can make decisions with near real-time data and keep your costs under budget. So you're already realizing that value from the earlier framework of business agility. The other 2 activities, allocate your cloud costs, because by allocating your cloud costs, by bringing visibility of, you're going to create a more cost-aware culture in your organization. And measuring and circulating efficiency value KPIs is the 4th activity. Because what this then does, it helps you to verify your cloud investment decisions and outcomes. It helps you to confirm that, yes, we are realizing the value that we've quantified earlier in our business case. As mentioned, the second pillar is cost optimization, or SAVE. Now, in terms of the CFM team and in terms of AWS, this is something that's common throughout various teams and the like. But from the CFM perspective, we tie up cost optimization into 4 activities. First, thinking about how you want to architect and design for value. Second is identify and eliminate cloud waste, one of the big differentiators between that and on-premise. The next one is thinking about choosing the best purchase option. So if you do have steady state usage, investing in either a reserved instance or a savings plans can get your environment to be even further optimized. We even have a product called Spot Instances, which gave you even greater discount of about 90%. And then lastly, part of optimization, which ties into the big theme of modernization, is ensuring that you're evolving with new cloud offerings. Of course, the outcomes of a lot of this pillar come down to avoiding unnecessary spend, repurposing any wasteful spend for innovation and experimentation, improving your unit economics. If you think about that earlier graph in which your cost per transaction, cost per project can be improved when you bring in more optimization. And lastly, taking advantage of the innovation that AWS brings forth to reduce your own costs. And what CFM also likes to do is bring this visual up to mind to better think about optimizing your workloads, which is a key part to achieving the value of the cloud and maximizing your ROI. From a CFM perspective, we always want customers to think about how there are just a number of activities that you can always leverage in order to optimize your environment. Some are more operational and technical in nature, some are focused on purchasing, and some might be more strategic, especially if we think about modernization and how you'll need to maybe invest in more resources, spend more time, re-architect your application, so on and so forth. But above all that, we hope there is a recognition by customers, and we always is to think about these purple arrows or blue arrows that are going around, which is that it is an iterative process. Cost optimization is not just a one-time activity, and that is it. So that was the SAVE pillar, which focused on cost optimization. To further achieve the value of the cloud, we have our third pillar, which is planning and forecasting. This is all about bringing as much predictability into your cloud usage as possible, and the like. So some of the activities that you'll want to employ, or we encourage your customers to increase in order to achieve the value in the cloud, includes thinking about how you can budget and forecast cloud costs dynamically, because what this does is increase your forecast accuracy and make sure that you are achieving the points that you had set out in your business case. Estimating cloud workload costs. You're going to probably see that your strategies change. And so you're going to want to bring in new workloads, new features. Estimating that upfront, which is feasible with the AWS pricing calculator, will enable you to make a faster cost-based decision. Yes, we want to invest in this. No, we don't. And continue to go back to that cloud value framework and improve your business agility. The other two activities here are about quantifying your cloud business value. So revisiting your business case to ensure that you are continuously earning and achieving what you're expected as an ROI, followed by integrating cloud financial management into your existing financial management system. We have to recognize that AWS is not your only expense in a company. So ensuring that you have it integrated with your existing processes is really the core of CFM, and then enables you to achieve the value of the cloud. So last but not least is the run pillar, cloud financial operations. This pillar is focused on bringing capabilities that allow organizations to continuously govern and scale with the cloud. Some of the activities that are associated with this pillar include securing an executive sponsorship for a CFM function, aligning stakeholders' understanding of a cloud cost, meaning it's of no value to continue to drive with the cloud if users or perhaps senior stakeholders don't realize what are the cost implications and what are the value gains that they get when operating the cloud. Bringing in guardrails. You want to have agility, but you want to business agility, but you also want to balance that with cost governance. The last activity that makes up this run pillar is evolving processes, automation, and tools, because that way you can have continuous cost efficiency at scale. So putting it all together, that is the cloud financial management framework, which helps customers manage, optimize, and plan their AWS cost and usage in order to realize the value of the cloud once they have migrated. It also helps, as a final note about the cloud financial management framework. It also helps for customers to build out a self-sustaining, long-term, cost and usage-aware culture. So that concludes that section, and I'm going to spend the last 5 minutes talking about, well, how do you build those cloud financial management capabilities so that I can maximize the ROI, so I can achieve the value of the cloud. So as I mentioned at the beginning when explaining cloud financial management, you will be moving to a cloud-based model where you are deploying and operating and thus optimizing at the same time. The characteristics that come with this model are things such as instant procurement, low cost of failure, and the ability to experiment and create value. Therefore, the key to CFM capabilities and realizing the value of the cloud is to drive organizational change, because cloud requires that new way of doing between business, finance, and technology. So to do so, the recommendations is to establish a new operating model to achieve those outcomes that you want, whether they're tied to the business case or go beyond it. It's about setting the rules of governance and control while enabling innovation. So perhaps giving each of your developers a set budget each month for them to experiment in a sandbox. It's about creating and maintaining cross-organization partnerships across finance and tech to help improve accuracy and stay within budget. And then overall, it's about building a deliberate long-term CFM program to streamline processes and achieve scale. So I'm going to talk about an example of a customer that I've worked with to show what it means to have that organizational model in place. So this is a customer who, following migration, they developed a cloud business office in their environment. So they had a AWS lead who oversaw the general governance. They had an individual dedicated to cloud migration, as they were their first phase of migration was only focused on testing and non-production workloads. They had an analyst who focused on cost optimization to ensure that their engineers were continuously optimizing the environment even once operating the cloud. They had a stakeholder devoted to financial management, so this came into play with reporting and billing and sharing that to stakeholders. They had a scrum master, and they of course had a resource devoted to training and comms. Some of the key characteristics within this cloud business office is that they had centralized their commitment-based purchase options, reserve instances, savings plans. They, as mentioned, the cost optimization analyst would highlight opportunities monthly to individual business units. The CBO would not only share the monthly report, but they also did special projects, such as increasing their tagging coverage so they can increase accountability. And lastly, they would attend a CIO monthly management meeting to provide insights on either their usage from year to date, how they are in terms of keeping an optimized environment, and their overall migration update. Some of the key achievements to date by deploying a CFM practice through a cloud business office in their environment is that 76% of their environment are maintained on commitment-based purchase options. Again, those reserved instances and savings plan. They've increased tagging from 23 to 49% because they have taken the steps to centralize the efforts and make a campaign about it. And then probably most interesting is they have achieved the 3.8 million of the forecasted business case result in the 22 months when they migrated to AWS. So in the last minute that I have, I'm just going to provide a final summary about cloud economics. So just to say that cloud economics is all about understanding and realizing the value of AWS Cloud. We have business value, which I spoke about in the beginning, which helps you answer the question, well, what value can I expect to achieve by using AWS? And this is focused and done through cost savings, staff productivity, operational resilience, and business agility. In hand with that, it's about cloud financial management. How can I effectively manage my AWS cost and usage to accelerate realizing that value or maximizing the ROI, which can be done through the see, save, plan, and run pillar. Recommended next steps as I conclude, we welcome you to reach out to your Cloud FORTE point of contact or to your AWS account manager to support you in building a business case or cloud financial management capabilities, or visit our website as well. Thank you very much.